Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Will he, won't he? Usually used in the context of love, but in this case it's about war. Will Netanyahu attack Iran? His war cabinet is divided. The United Nations is concerned. They fear Israel will attack Iran's nuclear facilities. If that happens, how will Iran respond? Where do its allies stand? How will they support Iran? Also, does Netanyahu have the political bandwidth to navigate this one? We'll discuss all of this and more as we track the latest flashpoint in West Asia. Meanwhile, NATO has issued a new warning. Russia is planning an undersea attack. What does that mean? After Tesla, will Elon Musk's Starlink be launched in India? What is the Saudi foreign minister doing in Pakistan with a delegation? Why did German Chancellor Olaf Scholz go to China again? What is G42? How does it find itself in the middle of the US-China tech war? And what's the new black hole that scientists have discovered? It's said to be 33 times the size of the sun. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. In India, a top Naxal leader is killed in an encounter in Chhattisgarh. Security forces eliminate more than 15 other Maoists and recover a large quantity of weapons. 3 soldiers were injured in the gun battle. This comes just 3 days before the general election begins. The International Monetary Fund raises the global growth forecast to 3.2%, lifting India's forecast to 6.8% and upgrading the outlook for the US and Russia too. But the projections for France and Germany have been cut. Eurozone's top 2 economies, and they remain unchanged for China. Nigeria's inflation climbed to a 28-year high in March. Soaring food and energy costs are behind this spike. For 15 straight months, consumer inflation has been rising in the country. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy and its most populous nation. In the US, Idaho to ban transgender treatment for minors. The Supreme Court clears the way despite the ongoing lawsuits. Under the law, physicians can be jailed for up to 10 years if they provide puberty-blocking medicines to minors. These are used by teens considering gender transition. The United Kingdom cracks down on sexually explicit deep fakes. Creating such images will be made an offence under a new law. Anyone found guilty will face a criminal record and unlimited fine. They could also be jailed if the image has been shared widely. And floods continue to ravage Russia and Kazakhstan. Moscow orders fresh evacuations in Siberia. The floods have forced thousands to flee. So far, Russia and Kazakhstan have evacuated more than 100,000 people. Day 3 of tensions in West Asia. Iran struck on Sunday. Israel is yet to make its move. It's not clear when they will strike, but there are indications on where they will strike. Iran's nuclear facilities. They could be on Israel's radar, says who? The IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. They're the global nuclear watchdog. And they say Israel should exercise, quote-unquote, extreme restraint.
Are you concerned that some of the targets might be nuclear facilities in Iran, especially that IAEA inspectors are on the ground? If you still can, and if you can confirm that, actually.
Well, of course, we are always concerned about this possibility. But of course, we always call for extreme restraint.
But Israel is not thinking restraint. It's toying with the other R word, retaliation. Despite the global appeals for de-escalation, Israel remains on the war path, intent to launch a counterattack, most likely on Iranian nuclear sites. They've been on Israel's target for years now. Israel insists that Iran is making nuclear weapons and Tehran denies it. It has signed deals and suffered sanctions over this. In recent years, it has also ramped up uranium production. Reports say it could be weeks away. Iran could be weeks away from making weapons-grade uranium, so a strike by Israel would hurt. It would undo a lot of the progress and set back Iran's nuclear program. It's a clear vulnerability, and this is what makes the proposition tempting for Israel. But the mission won't be easy. Striking Iranian nuclear sites is not a straightforward mission. These facilities have been targeted in the past and repeatedly so. So Iran has bolstered its defenses. For example, in the facility of Natanz. This is around 200 kilometers south of Tehran. Natanz is one of Iran's biggest nuclear facilities, also a high-value target for Israel. In 2021, this facility was sabotaged. Natanz lost its power supply. Iran saw this as an attack and boosted defenses after that. It built a new facility near the old complex. Now, this new site is buried underground. It is surrounded by mountains. So it also gets natural protection against missile strikes. Experts have looked at this site from all angles, and they say that even American bombs cannot penetrate this new facility. Now, most weapons in the Israeli arsenal are American. So a direct attack on Natanz will be operationally risky. What are the other options? As of 2021, Iran had 5 enrichment plants: Arak, Fordo, Isfahan, Bushehr, and of course Natanz. So on the list of high-value targets, these locations will feature on the top. Apart from these, Iran also has a research facility in Bonab and a military complex in Perchin. This complex is also linked to their nuclear program. Down south, there is Bandar Abbas. It is home to a uranium mine. And these are all commonly known assets. Iran could have other lesser-known nuclear facilities which could be under Israeli surveillance. So how do they plan to strike? Israel says it is building a coalition. Listen to this.
We have an opportunity to establish a strategic alliance against this grave threat by Iran, which is threatening to mount nuclear explosives on these missiles, which would be an extremely grave threat.
Will the West join this alliance? As of today, unlikely. Joe Biden has made it quite clear. He's been speaking to Netanyahu and delivering the same message. The US won't take part in any retaliatory strike. That is America's position. And without America's support, Israel will have a hard time convincing other Western nations. So this strategic alliance may be a non-starter. Israel may have to go it alone. Their war cabinet has been meeting every day since the Iranian attack, and they're yet to take a call. As for Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's offering little beyond rhetoric.
Iran stands behind Hamas, behind Hezbollah, behind others, but we are determined to win there and defend ourselves in all arenas.
What about Iran? Well, they're issuing more warnings, asking the West to stay out of it. Reports say Iran's military has warned 4 Western powers today: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. And what's the message? Stop backing Israel.
Our advice to all supporters of the Zionist regime is to appreciate the value of Iran's responsible and proportionate action instead of choosing inappropriate words about Iran.
Iran says their next strike will be much bigger, and they seem to be preparing for an Israeli response. On Sunday, Iran shut its nuclear facilities, citing security considerations. That's the term they used. But within 24 hours, access was restored. Although UN inspectors are still being asked to stay away, they were hoping to visit today, but they could not. Now, the ball is in Israel's court. They've struck Iran's nuclear sites in the past on multiple occasions, but those operations had Western support, and Israel could always deny involvement. This time, the dynamics are very different. Israel is perceived as the aggressor. It is under pressure from Western allies. You could say it's not new for Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's been a risk taker, known for brinkmanship, and you'd be right. Only this time, the odds are overwhelmingly against him. So it looks like Israel will strike. It's only a question of when and where, which brings us to Iran. How will they respond to such an escalation? What kind of firepower do they have, and who are their allies? First, let's look at what Iran's government is saying. They seem happy with the status quo. Israel hit their embassy in Syria, so they hit back with missiles and drones. As far as Tehran is concerned, the matter is closed. But what if Israel hits back? Then Tehran is threatening a swift attack. Not a telegraphed one like we saw on Saturday, but a quick and deadly one.
If the Israeli regime makes a mistake, This time Iran's response, as Iran's military commanders announced, will not be minimal but immediate and severe.
So plan A is clear: warn and threaten Israel. Make sure Benjamin Netanyahu does not respond. But what if he ignores these threats? Then Iran must think of a plan B, a response of its own. And there are three possibilities here. One is to use its proxies, like the Hezbollah or the Houthis. Hezbollah was not as involved in Saturday's attack. Maybe this time they will also join. The second is a repeat of Saturday, a mixture of direct and proxy attacks, more shock and awe than damage. And finally, option number 3, a lethal direct strike on Israeli military sites. No warning, no restraint. This one could actually cause serious damage. But which of these options will Iran choose? Well, that depends on Israel, in fact. If Israel's response is deadly, Iran may not have a choice. They will have to go one step above Saturday. If not, maybe proxies will do. So that answers the how of Iran's response. Now we come to the who. What is the security apparatus inside Iran? Who is calling the shots here? Iran has two major military forces. The first is the traditional army. The second is the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. And which one is more powerful? The IRGC. Iran's army is mostly deployed at the borders. But the IRGC is everywhere, in major cities, in friendly countries, in foreign embassies, even in the Iranian cabinet. Most of President Raisi's ministers are former IRGC officers. And how are they different from the army? The IRGC was founded after the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Their primary loyalty is not towards their country, it is towards the regime. So the army protects the country, that is Iran, and the IRGC protects the regime, basically your clerics and ayatollahs. Like any military, it has different wings. They have their army, navy, and air units. And what is the total strength? Almost 125,000 soldiers, 125,000 soldiers. In addition, they also have armed volunteers, sort of like a standing militia. They're deployed to crack down on anti-government protests. Reports say there are around 1 million volunteers. If true, that's a massive force. The IRGC also has stakes abroad. They created the Hezbollah in Lebanon. They also support and fund proxies in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. So to put it simply, the IRGC is the top dog in Iran, and they report directly to one man, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Most of Iran's strategic weapons are under their control, including the ballistic missile program. Even Saturday's attack was carried out by the IRGC. So any further response will come from them. The question is, are they ready for it? We ask because the IRGC is used to shadow wars, but conventional fighting is very different. Iran's last major war was from 1980 to 1988, a grueling encounter with neighboring Iraq. The war left them devastated. Iran lost more than 200,000 soldiers. It also cost them around 60% of their GDP. That war was also a lesson, because since then, Iran has upped their game. Today, they have a lethal ballistic missile program. It's the biggest in West Asia. Many of their missiles can easily strike Israel. The distance is 1,000 kilometers. That's what a missile will have to cover to reach Israel. The Sejal missile can easily do it. It has a range of almost 2,500 kilometers. Khyber is another example. It can hit targets almost 2,000 kilometers away. Then you have the Hajj Qasim. Total range is up to 1,400 kilometers. So Iran's ability is not in question. We saw that on Saturday. How many countries can spare 300 drones and missiles just for a PR stunt? But ability does not guarantee will. Iran's supreme leader has faced many challenges recently. You had anti-hijab protests, double-digit inflation, crippling sanctions, and even a military standoff with Pakistan. So the Ayatollah needs to show who's boss. Many Iranians celebrated Saturday's attack on Israel, but that has also raised expectations. Hardliners will want a bigger attack next time, and moderates will say, your economy cannot afford it. So the Ayatollah may not face protests like Netanyahu, but he faces a tricky choice too. What helps? is his position within the Iranian system. It's unlike any other country. The Ayatollah is like a father of the nation. He is the supreme religious authority, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the commander-in-chief of the IRGC, and he alone can declare war or peace. On paper, it's almost like limitless power. The Ayatollah is like the embodiment of the revolution, and the IRGC is the sword that guards it. So while Iranians may not want a full-blown war, if push comes to shove, expect them to close ranks behind their supreme leader. But wars need a lot more than fighting spirit. You need money, you need weapons, and if possible, you need allies. Now, Israel has a lot of them. Western powers, they are Israeli allies. They may not join the counterattack on Iran, but they give Israel a lot of money. Who can play that part for Iran? I'm afraid there are very few candidates here. Iran has no friends in the Western world. Its top allies are Russia and China. You also have some marginal players like Syria, Venezuela, and North Korea. Beyond that, Iran only has friends, not allies. For example, India and South Africa. They're friends of Iran. But neither country will support Iran militarily. Both have called for de-escalation, which leaves you with Russia and China. Will they come to Iran's rescue? Politically, we have seen positive signals. Beijing and Moscow called for de-escalation at the United Nations, but they also pointed to Iran's first strike.
We have also noticed that according to Iran, its military action was in response to Israel's aggression against its diplomatic premises, and the matter can be deemed concluded.
Yesterday, you instantly reacted and condemned the actions by Iran. It is regrettable that unlike the meeting today, you did not propose to convene the Security Council on the 2nd of April, where upon Russian initiative, an emergency meeting was called upon to discuss the Israeli strike against the consulate premises in Damascus.
So they want peace. At the same time, they also understand why Iran hit back. It was not a first strike. It was a retaliation. But will this political support extend to military affairs? Russia has already helped a great deal. In 2007, Iran bought missiles from Moscow, the S-300 anti-aircraft system. Sanctions ended up delaying that deal, but the delivery was made in 2019. Iran is also eyeing the more advanced S-400 missiles, the same one that India has purchased. So Iran's air defense has a significant Russian contribution, same with fighter jets. Last year, Iran finalized a deal with Russia. They're buying Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets. It could be a game changer for Tehran. Their air force only has a few dozen jets, and some of them predate the revolution. So Russia could help them modernize. And what did Moscow get in return? For starters, an important ally in the energy market, plus a defense supplier. Iran has sold its Shahid drones to Russia. Reports say thousands of them have been deployed in Ukraine. Now, these are basically suicide drones. They don't fire at targets, they simply crash into them. So it's cheap and effective. Russia and Iran also have an ideological enemy in the US. Both are under US sanctions, so they work together to bust them. In 2022, bilateral trade was around $5 billion, but last year Russia and Iran decided to trade in local currencies, so chances are trade will improve. Then you have China. That's the other partner of Iran. It's a very different relationship though. For China, Iran is a top source of oil. Around 10% of their crude imports come from Iran. Beijing is Tehran's biggest customer. Plus, you have a massive investment deal. China and Iran have signed a 25-year cooperation deal. Beijing is promising to invest $400 billion in Iran. Let me repeat that for you, $400 billion. So China is cultivating Iran as its top ally in the region. But will these countries support Iran militarily? Looks unlikely at the moment. Russia is already fighting a war in Ukraine. Will they focus on beating Kiev or defending Iran? It's a no-brainer for Putin. Also, Arab nations are leaning towards Israel. We saw Jordan shoot down Iranian drones. Reports say Saudi Arabia also chipped in. So will China and Russia risk antagonizing the Arab world? China gets around 15% of their oil from Riyadh. And Russia needs the Arabs to regulate oil prices. So don't expect Putin and Xi Jinping to jump in. But we can't rule out indirect support. Just look at China's response to the war in Ukraine. On paper, they're neutral. But they continue to help Russia, whether it's by buying Russian energy or selling military parts to the Russian army. Not weapons, but parts. Maybe they could do the same for Iran. But a bigger role would be diplomatic. China and Russia have already criticized the US for helping Israel. They could rally global opinion around this, make it a West versus the rest issue. That requires a lot of diplomatic investment, something that Iran cannot do, but Russia and China can. They could also shield Iran at the United Nations Security Council, maybe veto anti-Iran resolutions. But beyond that, it's a tough ask. We saw the US and the UK shoot down Iranian drones for Israel. Don't expect Russia or China to do that for Iran. Now let's take a closer look at Israel, at its current situation. The country has been attacked by its greatest foe. For the first time ever, Iran launched a direct attack, which is a bold statement, and it puts Israel in an awkward position for a number of reasons, not least because of the optics. This is Israel we are talking about, the most technologically advanced nation in West Asia, a not-so-secret nuclear power, and America's best friend. Israel just got slapped by Iran, as the Ayatollah puts it. A nation seen as a backwater theocracy, a country that has been hammered by sanctions for years. The attack does not make Israel's government look good, even if they foiled it. Even if 99% of Iran's drones and missiles were shot down, at the end of the day, Iran did dare to attack Israel directly, and it gives Netanyahu a new political headache. Because as you know, he's already unpopular, and has been so for a while now. Before the Hamas war, Netanyahu tried to confront Israel's judiciary. He was accused of attacking democracy, and it led to widespread protests, the biggest in the country's history. Then the Hamas attack took place last October. More than 1,200 people died. 250 Israelis were taken hostage. Netanyahu was accused of failing to protect Israel, which again led to protests. What do you think will happen now? Iran dared to attack Israel publicly for the first time. Netanyahu will be accused of making Israel look weak. And there will likely be protests again, this time by his core supporters, the conservative, security-first crowd that makes up his base. If Netanyahu alienates them, he loses everything. And not just during the next election. It could happen even before that, because Netanyahu is part of a coalition government. Together, they have 64 parliamentary seats. The total is 120. They have 64. So it's just a 4-seat advantage. Now, Netanyahu's Likud party has only half the seats in this coalition. They have only 32 seats. So any one of his allies can topple him if they choose to. That makes him extremely susceptible to political pressure, and that pressure has begun. This is Itamar Ben-Gvir, one of Netanyahu's allies. Ben-Gvir's party controls 7 parliamentary seats, and this is what he posted on Sunday. Impressive defense so far. Now we need a crushing attack. This is another ally of Netanyahu, Bezalel Smotrich. His party controls another 7 seats, and this was the message that he posted on Sunday. If our response resonates throughout the Middle East for generations to come, we will win. So basically, Netanyahu's political partners want him to attack Iran hard, and he may have to listen to them. But it's not just the hardliners urging him to respond. This is what Israel's army chief has said.
As we look ahead, we consider our steps, and this launch of so many missiles, cruise missiles and drones into the territory of State of Israel will be met with a response.
He's not talking politics, he's talking about security. If Israel does not respond, it sends a bad message that anyone can quote-unquote slap Israel and get away with it. For a country surrounded by potential enemies, that kind of reputation may sound the death knell. And all this puts Netanyahu in a tricky situation. How does he protect Israel's reputation? How does he reassure his supporters? How does he placate his coalition? Can all this be done without starting a full-blown war? It seems the only thing holding him back is his war cabinet. It's a cross-party 5-member panel. These 5 members coming from different parties, and reports say that this war cabinet is divided. They're meeting again today for the 3rd time in 3 days, but they have not managed to finalize a response yet. Why is that? Perhaps because of this man, Benny Gantz, Gantz is a member of the cross-party war cabinet. He's also a former deputy prime minister, former defense minister and former army chief. Gantz has been around the block. He understands the complexity of the situation. He says Israel will respond, and I'm quoting, when the time is right. It seems he does not want an immediate response that leads to war. So Benny Gantz could be the one holding them back. But will Netanyahu actually heed his advice, or will the increasingly unpopular prime minister drag his country into a wider war? Guess we'll find out in the days to come. And now let's turn our attention to Elon Musk. He's scheduled to visit India this weekend. Musk is expected to make a big announcement. He's expected to share his plans for Tesla's entry into India. And today, the impending visit has gained even more significance. The Tesla deal may just be the tip of the iceberg. Apparently, Starlink is also on the table. That's Elon Musk's satellite venture, Starlink. It could expand into India. The government has given an in-principle approval, and Musk will, of course, welcome this. Because back in the US, his businesses are under pressure. Yesterday, Tesla fired 10% of its workforce. There are growing concerns over Starlink's financial health. So India could be the lifeline that Musk is looking for. Our next report has more.
How do you get on the internet? At home, you probably have a broadband connection, which relies on a web of wires to power your Wi-Fi. For your phone, your network provider links up to a tower nearby so that you can stay online on the move. But soon, you may not need to rely on a broadband connection or a SIM card for your internet. What if you could get your internet straight from a satellite in space? That's what Elon Musk's Starlink service can provide. There are 5,000 Starlink satellites in space. They are linked together like a constellation of stars in space. Together, they can provide high-speed internet anywhere in the world, even to the most remote locations where no fiber cables or cell phone towers exist. For more than 3 years, Starlink has been trying to offer its service in India. Finally, the breakthrough came this week when the Indian government gave its nod. Pending a few approvals, Starlink can soon go live in India. So, how does it work? When you sign up for the service, you'll get a small satellite dish which you can install anywhere you like. These satellite dishes link up with your devices and talk to Starlink satellites in space. So when you want to look up something on the internet, the dish sends a signal up in space, which gets bounced around Starlink satellites. Once they have the information you need, they bounce a signal back to the dish, which serves the information you need on your device. So how is this better from your traditional broadband? Starlink claims the service is more reliable and can offer better speed with fewer disruptions. Case in point, the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's military has relied on Starlink in its ongoing war against the Russian forces. Initially, the service was free for them, but last year, Musk had famously tried to use access to Starlink as a bargaining chip. He had even ordered the service to be turned off. Ukraine still uses Starlink in the battlefield, but Kiev has been deploying alternatives too.
We use our satellite communication systems as well and work with new operators. That is the potential that helps us today, and we are actively developing it.
When Starlink goes live in India, it will have to operate a little differently. It will have to keep the data of Indian users within the borders of the country. Starlink won't be able to route data from overseas. Reports say it has also been asked to partner with an Indian company. Starlink won't have any first movers advantage either. There are more players in the fray, like OneWeb backed by Bharti Airtel and Jio, which has tied up with a Luxembourg-based company to provide the same service. Both companies are the biggest telecom players in India, so Starlink would need to have a competitive strategy. The expansion may prove to be challenging for Musk. He claims Starlink is profitable, but reports say the provider is still losing money and facing challenges in winning lucrative corporate contracts. The Indian market is known to be price sensitive, so finding the right price point would be key to Musk's success.
Our next story combines both of today's earlier topics, war and communication. Looking at the last 2 years, it feels that the world is back to an age of war. almost like the situation before the 1990s, before the end of the Cold War. Think of what we've achieved since then. There have been great technological leaps over the last 3 decades, like the internet. Many of you are watching us online right now in real time from different corners of the world. How do you think that's possible? The internet, yes, but how exactly? The simple answer is underwater cables. Over 95% of the world's data is transmitted under the oceans via giant data cables that crisscross continents. As of last year, there were 552 major seafloor cables, stretching across almost 1.5 million kilometers. You see how they connect every continent on Earth, how they cross all the ocean floors. Well, these cables were laid out during the last 3 decades. They helped connect every corner of the world. But now the West thinks that these cables are in danger. A NATO commander has issued a warning. He fears that Russia is planning an attack as part of a new form of what they call undersea hybrid warfare. This warning was issued by Vice Admiral Didier Molitor. He's the deputy commander of NATO's Allied Maritime Command, also shortened as MARCOM. Now, their commander has issued a warning. He says potential Russian hybrid warfare threatens 1 billion people. It threatens their security, 1 billion people. How did he arrive at this staggering number? He's talking about the population of all NATO countries combined. That's how you get 1 billion. He says they're all at risk, which is a bit of an exaggeration. 1 billion people won't be threatened simultaneously. It's not as though Russia can cut everyone's internet. And even if it somehow manages to, it's not like 1 billion people will die or NATO will be crippled. Yes, their information flow could slow down, or they may have to turn to the alternative, which is satellite internet, like Starlink. So far, satellites only transmit about 3% of the world's data, but Western militaries could always turn to it if needed. So the threat to communication seems a bit overblown. Now let's look at the undersea cables again. See how they circle the globe. I mentioned that there are 552 of them. Multiple cables also connect the same countries. So there are redundancies. It would take a massive coordinated attack to cut all of the cables. It's not something that can be done in secret or in one fell swoop. So don't worry, your evening video streaming session will be safe. An attack might slow down the internet, but it won't stop it. Then why is NATO so nervous? Because it speaks to a larger point. Complacency on the security front. A lot of our current undersea infrastructure is vulnerable. It was not designed to resist bombs. And it's not just internet cables. We also have other infrastructure under the seas, like oil and gas pipelines. Remember the Nord Stream blasts? The pipelines were blown up in 2022. They connected Russia to Germany. They allowed Russia to send natural gas, directly to Western Europe. They ran under the Baltic Sea. So Europe got cheap Russian gas and Russia made billions of dollars. It was a win-win until the war in Ukraine, because then Russia turned the taps off. It put Europe in a tough spot, but even as they were trying to wean away from the gas, the pipelines were destroyed. It was a blow, not devastating though. Europe found a way to survive, but it did suffer losses, and NATO wants to avoid that in the future, which is why they're talking about undersea infrastructure. It's a pragmatic move, especially as wars seem to be on the rise, but it's not some end-of-the-world scenario. So maybe NATO should avoid unnecessary fear-mongering and throwing around big numbers like 1 billion people being threatened. Let's turn to Pakistan now. They're hosting a very important guest, Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia. He arrived on Monday for a 2-day visit, but today was the moving day. He met Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, attended an investment forum, and also called on President Asif Ali Zardari. Now, the Saudi minister is traveling with a high-level team. It's the biggest delegation to visit Pakistan in decades. The water minister is with him, the mining and industry minister is with him, and so is the deputy investment minister, which makes one thing quite clear: this trip is all about money. With Pakistan, it often is. Saudi Arabia shares close relations with Pakistan. The kingdom has often bailed out Islamabad, including last year. In June 2023, Pakistan's central bank was low on foreign exchange, so Riyadh stepped in. They deposited $2 billion into the central bank. It's like that cousin that everyone has. You know they will keep messing up, but at the end of the day, they're family, so you must bail them out. Which brings us to the agenda this time. Pakistan is looking for investments from Saudi Arabia. A plan was announced last year. Islamabad said Riyadh would invest $25 billion over 5 years. Then this month, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif traveled to Saudi Arabia. He held talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and MBS agreed to expedite the investments. He said $5 billion will be released first, which is why Riyadh's top diplomat is visiting to identify where the investment can be made. One of the projects is a mine, the Reko Dik gold and copper mine in Balochistan. Reports say Saudi Arabia is investing $1 billion in it. And money aside, it's a big project. Balochistan is home base for Chinese investments. But recently, Saudi Arabia has made inroads. Last year, they decided to build a refinery in Gwadar. And not just any refinery, the largest in Pakistan. And now they're investing in a mine. Chances are China will not like it. They want a monopoly over the resources in Balochistan, and more players could complicate that plan. The Saudi kingdom is not bothered, though. They have promised to help, all the help, to tap Pakistan's economic potential.
I think this is a very, very positive visit from our perspective, at least, and the engagement that we have had so far lays the groundwork for significant and important work to be done in the next few months in order to achieve all of the potential that exists. And, we believe in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia very strongly in the potential that Pakistan holds.
Investing in Pakistan is a risky gamble. Just ask the Chinese. Their projects have been attacked by terror groups, but Islamabad is promising to fix all of it. Their foreign minister said the Saudi investments will be safeguarded.
Pakistan is committed to providing Saudi investors full support, relevant safeguards, and conducive environment for investment. Honorable Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has directed SIFC and relevant ministries to move forward on investment projects in a diligent and time-bound manner on fast track.
Tall promises there, but how many agreements did they sign? None yet. Apparently, Crown Prince MBS is planning a trip to Pakistan, so the deals will be signed when he's there. But let's take a step back from this visit. Let's look at this bilateral relationship. Why does Riyadh still believe in it? We understand Pakistan's logic. Their economy is going from bad to worse, so they need all the help that they can get. But what does Saudi Arabia get? Broadly, three things. First is military support. Pakistan has trained thousands of Saudi soldiers. In 1982, they signed a defense agreement after which Pakistan sent soldiers to Saudi Arabia. Guess how many? Almost 15,000. They remained in the kingdom throughout the Iran-Iraq war, sort of like bodyguards. Even today, Pakistani troops are believed to be in Saudi Arabia, around 1,000 of them. Secondly, Saudi Arabia gets a lot of labor from Pakistan. Around 2.7 million Pakistanis live and work there. That's almost 7.5% of the kingdom's population. Riyadh needs these people for their big-ticket projects, like their futuristic city Neom, and stadiums for their football World Cup bid. Finally, the third factor, an ideological and strategic counter to Iran. Most Pakistanis are Sunni Muslims, just like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It is a Sunni majority kingdom. But in contrast, Iran is a Shia country. So Riyadh has cultivated Pakistan to keep Iran in check. And Islamabad has been willing. We saw an example this year. Pakistan and Iran carried out airstrikes on each other. So the Saudis may not make money from Pakistan, but they can get strategic gains. And how should India see all of this? Under Crown Prince MBS, Riyadh has drawn a few red lines with Pakistan. The first one is on Kashmir. Riyadh has stopped openly supporting Pakistan's position. Even this month, they called for bilateral talks sorted out between India and Pakistan. Second, on the economy. The endless checkbook is gone. Yes, the kingdom has been generous, but it knows when to tighten the screws. An example was last year. Pakistan wanted an interest-free loan from Riyadh. In the past, they've given such loans, but this time MBS said no. So it's not a relationship of equals. Pakistan needs Saudi Arabia way more than Saudi Arabia needs Pakistan, and it's an equation that is unlikely to change. We've talked about a lot of wars on the show. Unfortunately, we're not done yet. Our next story is about the tech Cold War. The US versus China. The Americans have fired the latest salvo, and the prize is tech influence in the Gulf. This story features G42. What is G42? It's an artificial intelligence giant based in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. Now, G42 is a big deal in the region. They're working with the Chinese. They were working with the Chinese. The Biden administration did not like that, so they wielded money in Microsoft and got a $1.5 billion deal. That's the money Microsoft will invest in G42. What does it mean for the US, China, and the UAE? Our next report tells you.
$1.5 billion. That's how much Microsoft, the American tech behemoth, is going to invest in G42. This may come as a shock, because there's a high probability that you've never heard this name before. But in the Gulf, G42 is a big deal. This is an artificial intelligence giant. It's based in the United Arab Emirates. G42 focuses on biotechnology and surveillance. It is deeply embedded in the Emirati security. Several of the G42's top executives are associated with Dark Matter. That's another Emirati firm. It focuses on cyber intelligence and hacking, and employs former spies. What's more, the chairman of G42 is the Emirates' National Security Advisor. He's also the brother of the country's ruler. So G42 is a big deal, and now it has signed a deal with Microsoft. Under the partnership, G42 can use Microsoft's cloud computing platform, Azure. But what does Microsoft get out of this? A couple of things. Microsoft gets a minority stake in G42. Its vice chair gets a seat on the G42 board. Plus, Microsoft will potentially have access to huge Emirati wealth. But here's the catch. This deal benefits the Biden administration more than it does Microsoft. Because, according to the deal, G42 will accede to a security arrangement which has been negotiated with the US government. What does it say? There will be protections on the AI products shared with G42. And the AI firm will completely strip Chinese gear out of its operations. For months now, G42 has been under Washington scrutiny for its ties to China. Last year, the US declared that G42 is connected to an expansive network of companies that support the Chinese military's technological advancement. The US is concerned that powerful AI can be used by China. And Beijing gaining access to crucial data and cutting-edge tech is a security threat to Washington. So, top US security aides have been trying to lure businesses. They are deepening ties with tech firms the world over, especially the ones China is also interested in. And the Gulf is a big player here. It's trying to diversify and reduce its reliance on oil. So many leaders in the region, like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, are part of the AI gold rush. Major investors are keen. Hundreds of billions of dollars are up for grabs. And the US and China have been racing to exert tech influence here through money and forewarnings. For instance, the US has clearly told the UAE that when it comes to emerging technology, you cannot be both in China's and our camp. And G42 has been paying heed. In December last year, G42 severed its links to Chinese hardware suppliers. So either the new accord is a prize for picking sides, for helping the US box out China in the Gulf, or, at the very least, this is America striking while the iron is hot, in hopes of getting an edge in the tech Cold War.
Now let's look at China, like Germany seems to be doing. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is in Beijing again. It's his second trip to China since he took office, which wasn't too long ago. He took charge in December 2021 and he went to China the following year. So then why is he back so soon? Well, he says it's about politics. Germany taking a leadership role. This was him on social media today, #Ukraine. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said this. Take a look.
Regarding the Ukrainian crisis, China and Germany are committed to abiding by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, which includes safeguarding sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is the necessary foundation for a sustainable security architecture and should be respected.
Very worldly statements. It sounds like Germany and China are ready to take charge, that they will now address every global issue proactively. So should we prepare for a new China-Germany-led world order? Hardly. All this seems to be a cover-up to mask the real reason why Olaf Scholz was back in China so soon.
Mr. President, I am pleased that since my last visit in November 2022, there have been extensive exchanges and numerous dialogues between our two governments. The 7th German-Chinese intergovernmental consultation in Berlin last June was a milestone. Over the past 2 days, I led a business delegation to visit German companies in Chongqing and Shanghai. The economic relationship between our two countries is a very important issue.
Scholz is back to ask for more business. China is Germany's largest trading partner. Their annual trade is worth $207 billion as of last year. About 5,000 German companies currently operate in China. So there is dependence. If trade relations sour, so does Germany's growth. And that is exactly what has been happening because of the West's decoupling strategy, or as they call it these days, de-risking. Like most of the world, Germany underestimated its dependency on Beijing. It placed all its eggs in the Chinese basket, and when the Wuhan virus pandemic came, the move backfired. Supply chains were disrupted, businesses dried up, and Germany discovered just how vulnerable it was. So it began de-risking. This should have been done from the beginning, but we say better late than never. However, here's the problem. De-risking from China is painful. It hurts the economy of dependent nations like Germany, almost like a bitter pill that helps you fight disease. And a politician like Olaf Scholz may not be able to handle such a bitter pill. He isn't very popular in Germany. At the end of last year, his approval rating was at 17%, just 17. He cannot convince the German people to make tough choices, to take the bitter pill. So what does he do? Fly to Beijing when things get tough and try to look firm to save face. While in China, he complained about China's business practices to students at a university. It's something, but not exactly a brave confrontation. His message was also undermined by his entourage, German business leaders who have accompanied him, like the CEO of Mercedes-Benz.
China is the biggest trading partner of Germany, so to have an opportunity to meet with both political leaders as well as business people has been very fruitful. We are very committed as Mercedes-Benz. We have been here now for more than 2 decades, and we're continuing to invest in the Chinese market, not only in production capacity but also in research and development. And we will continue to invest in China.
That gives the game away. It's all about business, a way to shore up the German economy, no matter the long-term cost. Our last story tonight is about hungry beasts in outer space, black holes. These are regions in space, and they have immensely strong gravity. Pretty much everything we know about our universe depends on black holes. Yet ironically, we know very little about them. Every few months, scientists make a new discovery about black holes, and it changes our worldview. Take their latest find, for instance. Scientists have found the biggest black hole in our galaxy, the Milky Way. It has been named BH3, and it is 33 times the size of the Sun. Here's a report.
The Sun is at the heart of our solar system, quite literally, because it's at the center and we revolve around it. But also figuratively, because our lives depend on it. You already know that the Sun is huge. It contains 99.8% of the mass of the entire solar system. The Sun is about 333,000 times the mass of the Earth. Now imagine an object that's bigger than the Sun. An object whose mass is 33 times that of the Sun. Sounds impossible, right? But that object exists, and it's a black hole. Black holes are regions in space that have really strong gravity, which makes them the hungry monsters of outer space. They swallow everything that's close to them, anything that's too small or too slow to fight their gravitational force. Meaning black holes can swallow entire stars and planets. They can wreck entire galaxies. Even light can't escape. So black holes are formidable creatures. And with every bit of mass they eat, black holes grow. Now, scientists have found the biggest among them in our galaxy, the Milky Way. It's been named Gaia BH3. It's enormous. As we mentioned earlier, it is 33 times as massive as the Sun, and it's only 2,000 light years from the Earth, meaning it's quite close to our planet. But this is no ordinary black hole. In scientific terms, it's called a stellar black hole. This isn't just an adjective to describe the object's performance. It tells us how the black hole was born. When a large star runs out of fuel, it collapses, and so a stellar black hole is created. Scientists have found dozens of them in the Milky Way. Most of them weigh around 10 times the mass of the Sun, but BH3 is the biggest among them. What's interesting is that it was discovered by chance. You see, there are more than 100 million stellar black holes in our galaxy. They're all huge, they generate a powerful force. Yet they are very difficult to spot because they're invisible to us. The only way scientists can find them is if a star orbits around them. Thanks to data collected by the European Space Agency, scientists were able to spot a companion star around BH3. It was orbiting in a wobbly motion. When scientists saw that, it wasn't long before they found the biggest black hole in our galaxy. A chance discovery leading to an enormous reward.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In the US, scientists are training robot dogs to walk on the moon. In the Danish capital of Copenhagen, fire engulfed the historic stock exchange building. South Korea marked the 10th anniversary of the Seoul ferry sinking. And finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 2005, Pakistan's former military ruler turned President Pervez Musharraf arrived in India. He was also the architect of the Kargil War. He came to watch a cricket match. He held meetings with then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. And this was his first visit since the failed Agra summit in 2001, where Musharraf declared that there was no terrorism emanating from Pakistan. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Sir, please.
My brother.
문중식 배우 박원상님께서 낭송해 주셨습니다.
رژیم ندید اشتباه کرد در این قضیه باید تنبیه بشود و تنبیه خواهد شد.
April 13th, late Saturday night. Over 300 missiles and drones made their way towards Israeli soil. Iran launched its first ever direct attack at its foe, Israel. Israeli fighter jets swung into action as they roared across the north in defense. Israel says it had successfully foiled the attack, with its Iron Dome bringing down 99% of the Iranian missiles and drones. After more than a decade of shadow war and simmering tensions, the attack has brought the two countries to the brink of an all-out conflict, and it has pushed West Asia deeper into crisis. The man behind this attack is none other than the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He has led the Islamic regime for over 3 decades. No other figure in Iran carries as much authority and stature as he does. The supreme leader is the head of state and commander-in-chief. He is empowered to command the armed forces and even declare war and peace. He controls the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, or the IRGC. So a decision to strike Israel could not have gone forward without Khamenei's stamp. Reports say the IRGC presented Khamenei with several options to strike Israeli interests, including one that included a direct attack with medium-range missiles. Hours before Iran launched its attack, Ali Khamenei put out a message on X and reiterated what he had said just a few days ago. Israel will be punished.
دستگاه‌های سفارت در هر کشوری که وجود دارد به منزله خاک همون کشوری است که سفارت متعلق به اوست. وقتی به کنسولگری ما حمله میکنن مثل اینکه به خاک ما حمله کردن. این عرف دنیاست. 1 ماه تمام در امت اسلامی رژیم خبیث اشتباه کرد. در این قضیه باید تنبیه بشود و تنبیه خواهد شد.
But Ali Khamenei did not gain a firm grip on power overnight. In 1962, the 23-year-old Ali Khamenei joined the religious opposition movement of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The young Ali Khamenei became a devout follower of Khomeini. In 1979, Khomeini's government overthrew Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, ending the Shah's rule. From 1981 to 89, Ali Khamenei served as the president of Iran, becoming a close ally of the first supreme leader, Ruhollah Khomeini. A decade after the Islamic Revolution, when the founder of the Islamic Republic of Iran died in 1989, it left a brief vacuum in the seat of power. Shortly before his death, Khomeini had a fallout with his chosen heir, Hussein Ali Montazeri, so there was no agreed-upon successor. At the time, Ali Khamenei was not even the most senior political or religious figure in Iran, or even an Ayatollah. Yet, he took over the clerical throne. To facilitate this, the Assembly of Experts, a group of senior clerics that picks the supreme leader, amended the constitution to allow for a supreme leader with less than stellar religious credentials. Ali Khamenei was elevated overnight from the clerical rank of Hojat al-Islam to Ayatollah. Iran's constitution was also changed to abolish the post of a prime minister and vest greater authority in the president. Since then, Ali Khamenei has found several ways to increase his influence. He managed to develop a cult of personality. His supporters describe him as a divine gift to mankind. Formally or informally, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches of the government all operate under his absolute sovereignty. He controls Iran's security, military operations, and nuclear activity. His views also shape all of Iran's foreign policies. Ali Khamenei had already set the tone for his leadership back in 1981 when he was president, and he stands by it till date. The elimination of the State of Israel and a resolute opposition to the United States remain his ultimate goals.
From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that? If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Israel writes to 32 countries calling for sanctions to be imposed on Iran's missile program. This comes days after Tehran launched an unprecedented attack on its territory. In a visit to the demilitarized zone, the